Did you ever wonder how those cheap 1970s items your family barely thought twice about could end up being worth a fortune today? Back then, these everyday purchases filled homes, garages, and closets without anyone imagining their future value. So, what turned yesterday's bargains into today's treasure? Original Star Wars action figures were the kind of toys parents grabbed off department store shelves without a second thought, tossing them into shopping carts alongside groceries and school supplies. In the 1970s, these small plastic figures cost only a few dollars, and kids played with them so roughly that arms popped off, paint chipped, and tiny lightsabers vanished into couch cushions forever. Nobody saved the packaging because the cardboard was just something you ripped through to get to the toy inside. Families threw away boxes by the thousands, never imagining those flimsy cards would one day be worth more than the figures themselves. Today, a mint-condition figure still sealed in its original blister pack can sell for tens of thousands of dollars, and rare characters command prices that would make any parent laugh in disbelief. What was once a birthday gift snatched from the clearance aisle has become a serious investment traded at auction houses. The toys that survived intact did so by accident, forgotten in attics or buried in closets where time preserved what carelessness almost destroyed. Vintage Coca-Cola vending machines were once so common along roadsides, in gas stations, and outside small-town grocery stores that nobody gave them a second glance. In the 1970s, these heavy metal boxes dispensed ice-cold bottles for pocket change, and when they broke down or looked too rusty, owners simply hauled them to the scrapyard without hesitation. The thought of restoring one seemed absurd when you could just buy a newer model that worked better and looked cleaner. Families drove past these machines every day, never realizing that the faded red paint and chrome details would someday represent a lost era of Americana worth preserving. Today, a fully restored vintage Coca-Cola machine can sell for thousands of dollars, and even rusted units in rough condition fetch impressive prices from collectors eager to reclaim roadside nostalgia. Restorers spend months hunting for original parts, matching paint colors, and rebuilding cooling systems to bring these relics back to life. What businesses once discarded as junk has become a symbol of simpler times when a cold soda cost a dime and the world moved slower. First edition. Stephen King paperbacks sat in spinning wire racks at drugstores and supermarkets throughout the 1970s, priced low enough that anyone could grab one for a lazy weekend read. People bent the spines, dog-eared the pages, and left them on beaches, in waiting rooms, or stuffed between car seats where they slowly fell apart. These mass-market paperbacks were designed to be disposable, printed on cheap paper that yellowed quickly and covers that faded after a few months in sunlight. Nobody treated them as collectibles because the whole point was reading them once and passing them along or tossing them in the trash. Today, those same first edition paperbacks, especially early printings of Carrie, Salem's Lot, or The Shining, can command hundreds or even thousands of dollars when found in good condition. Collectors hunt obsessively for copies with intact covers, tight bindings, and pages free of the usual coffee stains and cigarette burns that plagued books of that era. What was once impulse entertainment has become literary treasure, and the copies that survived did so only because someone forgot about them long enough for time to make them valuable. Corningware blue cornflower dishes were the workhorses of 1970s kitchens, sitting in nearly every cabinet from coast to coast because they were cheap, practical, and seemingly indestructible. Families used them for everything from weeknight casseroles to holiday dinners, stacking them carelessly in cupboards and tossing them into ovens without worrying about cracks or chips. These dishes came in sets that cost almost nothing, often given as wedding gifts or picked up at discount stores during back-to-school sales. People broke lids, lost handles, and donated entire collections to thrift shops whenever kitchen trends changed or storage space ran low. Nobody imagined that the simple blue flower pattern would someday spark bidding wars on auction sites and collector forums. Today, rare pieces in pristine condition sell for hundreds of dollars, and complete vintage sets can fetch prices that would have bought an entire kitchen full of dishes in the 1970s. The pattern that once seemed ordinary has become iconic, representing an era when durability mattered more than design trends. families who held onto their original sets now own something worth far more than anyone expected. Polaroid. X70 cameras were the gadgets everyone wanted in the 1970s, delivering instant photographs that developed right before your eyes like tiny miracles emerging from a plastic box. Families snapped pictures at birthday parties, barbecues, and vacations, shaking the prints and watching images slowly appear as if summoned by magic. These cameras were not particularly expensive, and when newer models arrived with better features, the old SX70 units ended up in junk drawers, garage sales, and donation bins across the country. People assumed instant photography was a passing novelty that digital technology would eventually replace entirely. Today, the SX70 is considered one of the most beautifully designed cameras ever made, and working units sell for hundreds of dollars to photographers and collectors who appreciate its folding body and precision optics. Artists rediscovered the unique qualities of instant film, and suddenly a camera once dismissed as outdated became essential equipment for creative work. The units that survived did so by accident, tucked away by people who simply forgot they owned them. What seemed like yesterday's technology has become timeless. Original Levi's orange tab jeans hung on racks in department stores throughout the 1970s, priced as affordable workwear that anyone could buy without thinking twice about the expense. These jeans were built for durability, stitched with heavy thread and cut in styles that emphasized comfort over fashion. People wore them to factories, farms, and construction sites, fading the denim through honest labor until the fabric finally gave out and got tossed in the trash. Nobody saved their old jeans because new pairs cost so little that replacing them felt easier than repairing them. The orange tab distinguished these from the more formal red tab line, marking them as casual, everyday wear rather than anything special. Today, vintage orange tab jeans in good condition sell for hundreds of dollars, and rare washes or discontinued cuts can command even higher prices from collectors and fashion enthusiasts. The worn look that once meant a pair was ready for the garbage now signals authenticity that modern reproductions cannot replicate. Denim hunters scour thrift stores, estate sales, and forgotten closets, hoping to find pairs that survived decades of neglect. Muscle car barn finds were scattered across rural America throughout the 1970s, rusting quietly in sheds, fields, and abandoned garages where owners had parked them and walked away. Cars like the Chevelle, Charger, and Mustang were affordable transportation back then, powerful but common enough that nobody treated them as anything special. When engines failed or bodies rusted through, families simply bought newer models and left the old ones to decay wherever space allowed. Insurance costs and gas prices made these big block beasts impractical, and many sat untouched for decades under tarps or buried beneath years of junk. Today, those same rusting hulks can be worth more than the houses they sit beside, with rare models commanding six-figure prices even in rough, unrestored condition. Collectors travel thousands of miles chasing rumors of forgotten cars hidden in barns, hoping to find matching numbers, engines, and original paint beneath layers of dust and cobwebs. The muscle cars that nobody wanted have become the most sought-after vehicles in the hobby, and families who let them rot are sitting on fortunes they never expected. Pyrex patterned mixing bowls were given away as promotional items and sold cheaply at grocery stores throughout the 1970s, stacking neatly in kitchen cabinets as the quiet workhorses of family cooking. These colorful glass bowls came in cheerful patterns with names that sounded like suburban poetry, and housewives used them for everything from mixing batter to serving salads without worrying about breakage or style. When patterns fell out of fashion or pieces chipped, people donated them to charity shops or threw them away to make room for whatever new trend had captured their attention. Nobody saved them carefully because they seemed utterly replaceable, available at any store for next to nothing. Today, rare Pyrex patterns sell for hundreds of dollars per piece, and complete nesting sets in pristine condition can fetch prices that would have bought an entire kitchen in their original era. Collectors hunt aggressively for specific colors and designs, transforming casual thrift store visits into competitive treasure hunts. The mixing bowls that survived did so only because someone stored them and forgot. never imagining everyday kitchenware could become valuable. Atari 2,600 game cartridges filled bargain bins at toy stores and department stores throughout the late 1970s, sold for pocket change once the initial excitement of home video gaming began to fade. Kids begged for the newest titles, played them obsessively for a few weeks, and then abandoned them in closets or traded them away for whatever game their friends had grown tired of instead. Parents saw these chunky plastic rectangles as disposable entertainment, no different from the magazines and paperbacks that piled up and eventually got thrown out. When the video game crash arrived, unsold cartridges were dumped, buried, and destroyed by the truckload, erasing inventory that companies assumed nobody would ever want again. Today, rare Atari cartridges in good condition sell for thousands of dollars, and sealed boxes command prices that seem absurd for games that barely qualify as entertainment by modern standards. Collectors prize condition above all else, hunting for cartridges with intact labels, clean contacts, and boxes that survive decades of basement storage. The games that children forgot have become artifacts of a pivotal moment in technology. Hand-stitched leather cowboy boots lined the shelves of Western wear shops throughout the 1970s, priced affordably enough that working ranchers could buy several pairs without stretching their budgets. These boots were crafted by skilled artisans, using techniques passed down through generations, with each pair requiring hours of careful labor that nobody particularly valued at the time. People wore them hard, scuffing the leather through daily work until the soles wore thin and the stitching began to fail. When boots finally gave out, owners simply bought new ones and tossed the old pairs without a second thought. The craftsmanship that went into each pair seemed ordinary because the supply of skilled bootmakers still exceeded the demand. Today, vintage hand-stitched boots from respected makers sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, and the artisans who created them are recognized as masters of a dying craft. Modern boots cannot replicate the quality of leather, the precision of stitching, or the character that only decades of aging can produce. Collectors seek pairs with exotic skins and provenance, connecting them to workshops now long closed. Fender and Gibson electric guitars hung on the walls of music shops throughout the 1970s, priced within reach of teenagers who mowed lawns and saved allowance money for months. These instruments were tools for making music, not investments for making money, and players treated them accordingly. People gigged with them in smoky bars, tossed them into van cases without padding, and traded them freely whenever a different model caught their eye. Scratches, dents, and cigarette burns accumulated on headstocks and bodies without anyone worrying about resale value or collector appeal. When newer models arrived with updated features, musicians sold their old guitars for whatever quick cash they could get. Today, vintage Fenders and Gibsons from that era sell for tens of thousands of dollars, with rare models commanding prices that exceed the cost of luxury automobiles. Collectors examine every scratch and serial number, authenticating instruments that musicians once considered interchangeable workhorses. The guitars that survived intact did so because someone stored them and forgot, never imagining that everyday instruments would become treasures fought over at auction. Solid oak bedroom furniture sets filled showrooms at department stores and furniture outlets throughout the 1970s, priced affordably enough that young couples could furnish entire homes without breaking their budgets. These heavy dressers, nightstands, and bed frames were built from real wood by craftsmen who still took pride in dovetail joints and hand-rubbed finishes. Families used them hard, scratching surfaces with belt buckles, staining tops with water rings, and eventually donating entire sets to charity when styles changed or kids moved out. Nobody imagined that the mass-produced furniture they bought on credit would someday be worth more than the sleek modern pieces that replaced it. Today, vintage solid oak sets command premium prices from buyers tired of particle board and veneer that falls apart after a few years. The weight and durability that once made these pieces difficult to move now signals quality that modern manufacturing rarely matches. Collectors hunt estate sales and thrift stores hoping to find matching sets with original hardware still intact. What families once gave away has become furniture worth inheriting. Vintage Harley-Davidson motorcycles rumbled through small towns and along country highways throughout the 1970s, ridden by workers who saw them as practical transportation rather than collectible machines. These bikes were loud, heavy, and required constant maintenance that most owners performed themselves in driveways and garage floors. When engines wore out or frames rusted through, riders often parted them out or sold them whole for a few $100s to whoever showed up with cash. Nobody polished chrome obsessively or worried about keeping original paint because these motorcycles were meant to be ridden hard and replaced when they finally gave out. The idea of storing one carefully for future value would have seemed absurd to riders who measured worth in miles traveled rather than dollars preserved. Today, those same motorcycles sell at auction for prices that would have bought entire fleets in their original era. Collectors restore them meticulously, hunting for matching numbers and period-correct parts that prove authenticity. The bikes that working riders once considered disposable have become rolling investments worth more than most houses. First-run movie posters arrived at theaters throughout the 1970s rolled in cardboard tubes, meant to be displayed for a few weeks and then thrown away or painted over. Theater managers tacked them to lobby walls, folded them into storage closets, or simply tossed them in dumpsters once the next film arrived. These posters were advertising materials, not art, and nobody treated them with any particular care or reverence. Kids sometimes begged managers for posters of their favorite films, taking them home to tape on bedroom walls where sunlight faded the colors and thumbtacks left holes in the corners. The idea of preserving them in archival frames would have seemed ridiculous for something printed by the thousands and distributed free to every cinema in the country. Today, original theatrical posters from that era sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, with rare titles and pristine conditions commanding prices that rival fine art. Collectors examine fold lines, pinholes, and fading patterns to authenticate prints that theaters once considered disposable. What was marketing material has become museum-worthy. Antique cast-iron cookware sat in kitchen cabinets and hung from pot racks throughout the 1970s, passed down from grandmothers who had cooked on the same skillets for decades. These heavy black pans were considered old-fashioned by families eager to embrace modern non-stick coatings and lightweight aluminum that seemed so much easier to handle. People donated cast iron to thrift stores, left it rusting in garage sales, or simply threw it away when the seasoning flaked off and food started sticking. The weight alone made these pieces seem like relics from a harder era that modern convenience had finally surpassed. Nobody imagined that the manufacturing methods used to create these pans had already disappeared, making each surviving piece irreplaceable. Today, antique cast iron from respected foundries sells for hundreds of dollars, and rare pieces with unusual sizes or markings command even higher prices. Collectors study gate marks, heat rings, and logo variations the way scholars examine ancient texts. The cookware that families discarded as outdated has become culinary treasure that modern foundries cannot replicate no matter how hard they try. Mechanical wristwatches from Sears and other department stores ticked quietly on wrists throughout the 1970s, purchased for graduations, birthdays, and holidays without anyone considering them special. These timepieces cost modest sums and were replaced easily when batteries died or springs broke, tossed into junk drawers where they sat forgotten for decades. People assumed that newer quartz watches with digital displays made these older mechanical movements obsolete, relics of a less precise era that technology had finally surpassed. The craftsmanship inside each case went unnoticed because accuracy mattered more than artistry, and digital watches delivered accuracy without any maintenance headaches. Nobody opened the case backs to admire the tiny gears and springs working in harmony. Today, vintage mechanical watches from that era often outvalue modern luxury brands, with collectors paying premium prices for movements that still tick after decades of neglect. The timepieces that department stores sold as affordable accessories have become horological treasures celebrated by enthusiasts worldwide. What families once considered disposable has become wearable history. Original vinyl record pressings filled milk crates and cardboard boxes in basements and attics throughout the 1970s, stacked carelessly by families who had already moved on to newer formats and better sound systems. These albums had been played hundreds of times, their grooves worn smooth by diamond needles that tracked the same songs until the music became part of family memory. People sold entire collections at garage sales for pocket change, eager to clear space and embrace the cassette tapes and compact discs that promised cleaner sound without scratches or skips. Nobody handled these records with cotton gloves or stored them in climate-controlled rooms because they were just music, not investments. The idea of a scratched album being worth anything seemed laughable to families dumping boxes at thrift stores. Today, original pressings in good condition sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, with rare albums and specific label variations commanding prices that shock anyone who remembers buying them new. Collectors examine matrix numbers and stamper codes the way gemologists study diamonds. What families once discarded as obsolete technology has become audio treasure. Handmade Navajo turquoise jewelry filled display cases at roadside trading posts and tourist shops throughout the 1970s, sold to travelers who wanted authentic Southwestern souvenirs without spending serious money. These rings, bracelets, and necklaces were crafted by skilled artisans using techniques passed down through generations, but buyers rarely asked about the makers or understood the cultural significance behind each design. People wore them casually, tossing them in jewelry boxes alongside costume pieces and forgetting about them when fashion trends shifted toward gold and diamonds. The turquoise cracked, the silver tarnished, and many pieces ended up at estate sales priced at a few dollars each. Nobody authenticated them or researched the artists because they seemed like affordable trinkets rather than serious investments. Today, vintage Navajo jewelry from respected silversmiths sells for thousands of dollars, with collectors studying hallmarks and stone quality to verify authenticity. The tourist souvenirs that travelers once bought on impulse have become cultural artifacts connecting modern owners to traditions nearly lost. Chrome dinette kitchen sets crowded furniture showrooms throughout the 1970s, sold as budget-friendly options for young families who needed somewhere to eat breakfast without spending a fortune. These shiny tables with vinyl-covered chairs looked modern and cheerful, easy to clean and tough enough to survive kids banging silverware and spilling cereal milk. Families used them until the chrome pitted, the vinyl cracked, and the whole set looked too shabby to keep in a kitchen anyone might actually see. Donations to thrift stores and trips to the curb happened without a second thought because these sets cost almost nothing and seemed endlessly replaceable. Nobody imagined that the atomic age styling and diner aesthetic would someday become desirable again. Today, vintage chrome dinette sets in good condition sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, celebrated as icons of mid-century modern design that capture a specific moment in American home life. Collectors restore pitted chrome, reupholster torn vinyl, and hunt for matching leaf extensions that complete the original configurations. The budget furniture that families discarded has become sought-after design statement. Wooden pinball machines stood in arcades, bowling alleys, and pizza parlors throughout the 1970s, swallowing quarters from teenagers who slapped flippers and tilted cabinets until managers chased them away. These machines were workhorses built to survive abuse, their wooden cabinets scratched by belt buckles and stained by spilled sodas. When newer electronic games arrived with flashier graphics and louder sounds, operators hauled the old pinball machines to storage rooms or sold them for scrap to anyone willing to cart them away. The mechanical complexity inside each cabinet went unappreciated by arcade owners focused on revenue per square foot rather than craftsmanship per quarter. Nobody restored them lovingly or displayed them in homes because they were commercial equipment, not collectibles. Today, vintage pinball machines in working condition sell for 5 figures, with rare titles and pristine artwork commanding prices that would have bought entire arcades in their original era. Collectors rebuild playfields, replace worn rubbers, and hunt for original backglasses that prove authenticity. The arcade discards that operators abandoned have become centerpieces of game rooms worldwide. Vintage Schwinn Stingray bicycles leaned against garage walls and rusted in backyards throughout the 1970s, ridden hard by kids who treated them as transportation rather than collectibles. These banana seat bikes with their high handlebars and chrome fenders were the coolest things on two wheels. But they cost little enough that parents replaced them without hesitation when kids outgrew them or moved on to 10 speeds. Nobody stored them carefully because newer models arrived every year with updated colors and features that made last season's bike seem outdated. Families sold them at garage sales for a few dollars or simply left them at the curb when moving day arrived. The chrome pitted, the seats cracked, and the tires rotted on thousands of bikes that nobody thought worth saving. Today, vintage Stingrays in original condition sell for thousands of dollars, with rare colors and factory accessories commanding prices that shock anyone who remembers riding them. Collectors restore them meticulously, hunting for correct grips, pedals, and decals that prove authenticity. The bikes children abandoned have become prized machines. Original oil paintings from starving artists' sales hung on living room walls throughout the 1970s, purchased for pocket change by families who wanted real art without real art prices. These mass-produced paintings arrived at hotel ballrooms and convention centers by the truckload, sold by fast-talking promoters who promised authentic hand-painted originals at unbeatable prices. People bought landscapes, seascapes, and still lifes that matched their couches without ever asking about the artists or imagining any future value. The frames often cost more than the canvases inside them, and families donated or discarded paintings freely whenever redecorating made them seem dated. Nobody authenticated them or researched signatures because they were decoration, not investment. Today, certain starving artists' paintings have been reappraised and recognized as genuine works by artists who later achieved fame. Galleries now hunt for specific signatures and styles that were once dismissed as motel art. The bargain paintings that families bought on impulse have become unexpected discoveries worth far more than the few dollars originally paid. Solid silver flatware sets sat in velvet-lined boxes throughout the 1970s, given as wedding gifts, and then tucked into china cabinets where they gathered tarnish for decades. These heavy utensils required constant polishing that busy families rarely had time to perform, so they stayed boxed while stainless steel handled everyday meals instead. People inherited sets from grandmothers and mothers without ever using them, unsure what to do with formal silverware in an era that had abandoned formal dining. When estate sales arrived, these sets often sold for modest sums to dealers who melted them down for their silver content alone. Nobody appreciated the craftsmanship of patterns discontinued decades earlier or the history embedded in each monogrammed handle. Today, complete vintage silver sets in desirable patterns sell for thousands of dollars, with rare serving pieces commanding prices that far exceed their melt value. Collectors hunt for specific manufacturers and designs that connect them to eras of elegance now vanished. The wedding gifts that sat unused have become heirlooms worth far more than the couples who received them ever imagined possible. Rotary dial telephones in designer colors sat on kitchen counters and bedroom nightstands throughout the 1970s, leased from phone companies who eventually let customers keep them when newer push-button models arrived. These heavy plastic phones came in avocado green, harvest gold, and burnt orange, colors that matched the decade's decor so perfectly they seemed almost mandatory. When touch-tone service became standard, families unplugged their rotary phones and tossed them in closets or dropped them at thrift stores without a second thought. The satisfying click of the dial and the weight of the handset felt obsolete compared to sleek new technology that promised faster connections and modern convenience. Nobody imagined these utilitarian objects would ever be worth displaying, let alone collecting. Today, vintage rotary phones in rare colors and pristine condition sell for hundreds of dollars to collectors and designers who appreciate their sculptural beauty and nostalgic charm. The phones that families discarded as outdated technology have become sought-after decor pieces that capture a specific moment in American home life perfectly. Early home video game consoles gathered dust in closets throughout the late 1970s, pushed aside when the novelty of playing Pong and Tank wore off and families moved on to newer entertainment. These chunky boxes with their wood grain panels and simple controllers represented the dawn of home gaming, but nobody treated them as historical artifacts at the time. parents sold them at garage sales for a few dollars or simply threw them away when spring cleaning revealed how much space they occupied. The games seemed primitive compared to arcade cabinets, and the technology advanced so quickly that last year's console felt instantly obsolete. Nobody saved original boxes, manuals, or accessories because these were toys, not treasures. Today, early consoles in working condition with original packaging sell for thousands of dollars, anchoring serious gaming collections that document the birth of an industry worth billions. Collectors hunt for complete sets with matching serial numbers and factory seals that prove authenticity. The electronic toys that families discarded have become foundational pieces of gaming history. Leaving real food out for Santa overnight seems like the most innocent Christmas ritual of all, and in private homes it still is. But in the 1970s, this tradition extended far beyond living rooms. Schools, community centers, stores, and even public lobbies would set out plates of cookies, pieces of fruit, slices of cake, or whole cups of warm milk for Santa, letting every child who walked by feel like they were part of the magic. Nobody questioned hygiene. Nobody wondered how long the food had been sitting out or whether it was safe. It was simply a gesture of charm and belief, one that made the holiday season feel alive in every corner of town. Today, however, public health codes strictly forbid leaving perishable foods out in public spaces. Food safety laws treat these little displays as contamination risks. Even cookies, if unsealed, can violate regulations about pests and sanitation. The world became more careful, cleaner, and much more anxious. Maybe that is understandable, but something tender was lost along the way. When you think back on those public Santa plates, overflowing with half-eaten treats and crumbs left by passing children, you can almost feel the warmth of a community that believed in magic together. Asbestos, oven mitts, and hot pads were marketed as indestructible. Advertisements promised they could handle any heat without ever catching fire. Housewives trusted them, pulling casseroles and roasts straight from the oven with confidence. It was the post-war era of atomic age optimism, when scientific materials meant progress and danger felt impossible. The word asbestos was said with pride. It sounded technical, modern, and safe. Nobody imagined that the same mineral used in insulation and factories could turn a kitchen into a slow-motion health hazard. The secret was asbestos, a mineral that could resist flames but released deadly fibers every time it was touched. Each squeeze, each fold, released invisible dust into the air. Over time, those fibers lodged deep in the lungs, leading to mesothelioma and other fatal illnesses decades later. The danger was silent and patient, hiding behind the promise of safety. By the time the truth came out, many who used them daily were already sick. Asbestos was once hailed as the perfect material for modern living. It ended up becoming one of history's most infamous killers. Those oven mitts, sold with warmth and trust, literally took people's breath away. Orbits was the drink that looked more like a science experiment than a thirst quencher. In the late 1990s, kids would stop in the grocery store aisle just to stare at the bottles, bright liquids with tiny gelatin spheres suspended inside, floating like little planets in a lava lamp. It was supposed to be futuristic, a drink you could both sip and watch. The first sip was strange, a mix of sweet syrup and jelly-like orbs drifting on your tongue. For some, it was a revelation. For others, pure confusion. But no one could deny that it was unlike anything else on Earth. People were fascinated, but they were also confused. The texture was unlike anything they had ever felt. Too thick to gulp, too thin to chew. The Food and Drug Administration soon stepped in, failing the product's stability tests because the suspended beads did not stay evenly distributed over time. Bottles leaked, clumps formed, and the novelty turned into a sticky mess. Within 2 years, Orbits disappeared from shelves, remembered more for its weirdness than its taste. But for those who tried it, the memory still feels strangely magical. A moment when food and science collided in the most bizarre way imaginable. It might not have lasted long, but it showed how curiosity could make something as simple as a drink feel like a glimpse into the future. Few experiences from 1970s gym class were as invasive as the uniform check. Gym teachers demanded absolute conformity. Every student had to wear the exact school-issued shorts and shirts, no exceptions. Before class began, teachers would sometimes order students to line up and lift their shirts slightly or tug their shorts to show the waistband, proving they were wearing the correct outfit underneath. Some students froze in embarrassment, their faces burning as teachers walked the line. Others tried to laugh it off, but the unease lingered long after class ended. The smell of sweat, the sound of whistles, and the echo of orders made those inspections feel like tiny military drills. If anyone forgot or substituted their own clothes, it meant detention or a lower grade. In some schools, girls were told to change in front of one another, and privacy barely existed. It was not just about uniforms, it was about control and compliance. Teachers believed enforcing sameness built unity, but it only built resentment and discomfort. For some students, those checks were humiliating and frightening, especially when teachers crossed personal boundaries in the name of discipline. Years later, those same rules feel unthinkable. What was once called routine inspection would now be recognized for what it truly was, an invasion of personal space that stripped students of both comfort and dignity. Aqua Dots were a toy that promised endless creativity with just a few drops of water, but they became infamous for an entirely different reason. The tiny, colorful beads could be arranged into shapes and designs, and when sprayed with water, they stuck together magically. Kids loved how simple and satisfying it was. Many children turned their kitchen tables into art studios, proudly crafting hearts, stars, and animals that shimmered like candy. The bright colors and glossy texture made them irresistible, even to toddlers who were too young to play safely. Parents praised the toys' creativity at first, never imagining that the harmless beads could turn into something so dangerous. But soon after their release, reports emerged that children were falling sick after swallowing the beads. Tests revealed that the coating contained a compound that turned toxic inside the body, producing a chemical similar to a date-rape drug. Panic spread quickly among parents, and the product was pulled from store shelves worldwide. For many families, it was a wake-up call about how even the most innocent-looking toy could hide a sinister danger. The recall was massive, and Aqua Dots became a symbol of the dark side of 1980s-style creativity, colorful, exciting, and completely reckless. What was meant to be an art toy ended up in the history books as one of the most shocking product failures of the decade. Churches and schools setting up high decorations without ladders or harnesses was one of those behind-the-scenes holiday traditions no one ever questioned in the 1970s. You would walk in one morning and see garlands, stars, wreaths, and giant paper bells hanging from rafters or high windows, and you never stopped to think about who climbed up there to put them in place. The truth was simple. Volunteers did everything by hand. Teachers balanced on chairs stacked on tables. Parents shimmied up bookshelves or window ledges. Church volunteers climbed onto pews and walked along beams like it was nothing more than part of the job. Nobody filled out paperwork. Nobody had safety training. Everyone just wanted the space to look beautiful for the season. Today, though, workplace and volunteer safety laws make these practices illegal. You need certified ladders, harnesses, supervision, and even insurance coverage depending on the height. Decorations that once appeared effortlessly now require full safety compliance. It keeps people protected, but it also reminds us how different the world used to be. There was a sense of community effort then, a shared willingness to do something a little risky just to make the holidays shine brighter, and you can still picture those halls and sanctuaries glowing with decorations that only pure determination could have placed so high. Glass baby bottles with lead paint designs were once a symbol of love and care. Parents in the 1950s adored them, decorated with cheerful ducks, rabbits, and pastel-colored animals. They were gifts for baby showers, proudly displayed in kitchen cabinets, tiny keepsakes of innocence. It was the height of the post-war baby boom, and the market was flooded with products that blended charm with modern design. Mothers trusted anything that looked sanitary and cute, assuming regulators had already done the worrying for them. But in truth, safety testing barely existed. Style mattered more than science. The paint used for decoration contained lead, a neurotoxin that accumulates in growing children and causes irreversible brain damage. No one imagined those smiling cartoon faces could poison their babies. For years, infants drank warm milk from bottles that looked wholesome but were dangerously contaminated. By the time regulators banned lead paint, the damage had already reached countless households. Modern parents might shudder at the thought, but those pastel bottles still turn up in antique stores, a haunting reminder that even the cutest products can hide something cruel. Beauty, it turns out, should never come before safety. Sizzlean was supposed to be the future of breakfast. Marketed in the 1970s as better than bacon, it promised the same smoky flavor with less fat and cholesterol. Commercials showed smiling families flipping perfect strips on the stove, proud to be eating healthier. But Sizzlean was not exactly what it claimed. It was a mix of pork and beef blended with artificial flavorings and fillers that barely qualified as real meat. Over time, new labeling laws and stricter regulations revealed that its marketing had been misleading. The product was pulled and Sizzlean quietly faded away. For those who remember it, the name still carries a strange nostalgia, half comfort, half caution. It was a glimpse into an era when we trusted packaging more than ingredients and believed that science could reinvent even bacon. Some memories sizzle out, others linger just long enough to remind us how good intentions can sometimes turn synthetic. Household bug bombs with DDT were once considered the ultimate solution for any insect problem, filling homes with a haze of chemicals that promised to wipe out everything from roaches to ants. Grandparents shook the can, placed it in the center of a room, and pressed the button before leaving the house for hours. When they returned, they believed they were stepping into a cleaner, safer home, free from pests that threatened their food or comfort. Back then, DDT was widely trusted, seen as a scientific miracle that protected crops, homes, and even public spaces. But DDT does not simply evaporate after use. It lingers on surfaces, carpets, clothing, and even inside the human body. Accumulating with every new exposure, scientists later discovered that DDT disrupted hormones, damaged wildlife, and posed serious health risks to people of all ages. When the evidence became undeniable, regulators banned DDT nationwide, and the household bug bombs that contained it vanished from store shelves. Many families were shocked to learn that something they used regularly carried dangers far beyond the bugs it killed. Looking back, these foggers represent a time when convenience outweighed caution, and chemicals were introduced into homes with little understanding of their long-term impact. Today, DDT stands as a symbol of environmental and health awareness born from painful discovery. Discipline in the 1970s often had a sense of irony, and nowhere was that clearer than in the cigarette detention swaps. Teachers were supposed to confiscate cigarettes from students caught smoking on school grounds, but many took the pack and kept it for themselves. Some even lit one right there, turning the punishment into a joke. Students laughed awkwardly, and the message was confusing. Smoking was wrong for kids, but apparently fine for the adults who enforced the rules. Teachers would sometimes share stories about their favorite brands or use cigarettes as a bonding gesture, as though it proved they were cool. This casual hypocrisy showed how blurred the moral boundaries were. Smoking was everywhere, in teacher lounges, hallways, and even classrooms. The health warnings that seem obvious now were barely discussed then. For students, the act of being caught felt less like discipline and more like initiation into adulthood. Watching your teacher take your cigarette and enjoy it sent a message louder than any lecture. It told you that authority could bend the rules whenever it wanted. Those moments taught cynicism early, long before students had words for it. Looking back, it feels absurd, even darkly comedic, that the people meant to enforce responsibility were often modeling the opposite. It was a different time, yes, but also a clear example of how the culture of the 1970s blurred right and wrong under the haze of cigarette smoke. The toy chemistry sets of the 1980s were not the watered-down, safe versions you see today. Back then, they were miniature laboratories filled with real acids, flammable powders, and unmarked mystery chemicals. For a generation raised on curiosity and chaos, they were irresistible. Kitchens turned into science labs and basements filled with smoke as kids tested experiments that often went wrong. Parents discovered scorched countertops, blackened test tubes, and half-melted spoons left behind in the name of science. Some kids proudly created small explosions, convinced they were future geniuses, while their mothers screamed from upstairs to stop making that smell. Kids mixed, boiled, and ignited all sorts of concoctions, often inside their bedrooms. Instructions encouraged experimentation, sometimes even hinting at reactions that produced fire or smoke. The danger was part of the appeal. There were countless reports of burns, ruined carpets, and explosions that sent families running for the garden hose. Yet these kits also inspired many future scientists who credit those reckless experiments for sparking their curiosity. Eventually, regulations forced toy makers to strip the sets of anything remotely hazardous, turning them into safe but boring science-light boxes. The old chemistry sets may have been risky, but for the daring kids of the 1980s, they were proof that discovery often came with a little danger and a lot of smoke. Leaving wrapped gifts under the tree in public spaces was one of those whimsical little touches that made the holidays in the 1970s feel magical. You would walk into a library, a bank lobby, a school hallway, or even a town hall, and there would be a fully decorated Christmas tree surrounded by beautifully wrapped presents. Most of them were empty boxes, of course, but nobody cared. The point was the feeling, the sense that the whole community was celebrating together. Children loved pressing their faces close to the boughs and shiny paper, imagining what might be inside. Adults enjoyed the display as a symbol of generosity and shared holiday cheer. Nobody thought about theft or tampering or anything sinister. It was just part of December, as natural as wreaths on doors and lights in windows. Today, though, a wrapped box sitting unattended in a public place is treated as a suspicious package. Security protocols kick in fast, and entire buildings can be evacuated over something that used to be nothing more than festive decoration. Anti-theft policies, liability concerns, and modern fears have erased that simple tradition. But for anyone who lived through it, the memory of seeing those pretty boxes waiting under a glowing tree still feels like stepping into a storybook, one where wonder mattered more than worry. Aerosol cheese in steel cans was the kind of futuristic food that only the 1950s could have dreamed up. It was creamy, convenient, and somehow scientific. All the things that modern America was obsessed with at the time. Housewives marveled at how it could be sprayed directly onto crackers, celery sticks, or even straight into the mouth of a giggling child. It felt like progress you could taste. No knife, no cleanup, no effort. The secret behind the spray was pressure from chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, the same chemicals used in aerosol hairspray and refrigeration. They made the cheese foam perfectly, airy and light, and gave it that signature hiss when you pressed the nozzle. Nobody thought twice about it until scientists in the 1970s revealed that CFCs were eating away at the ozone layer, literally tearing a hole in the atmosphere. What had once been the pride of kitchen technology suddenly became an environmental villain. The cheese itself wasn't the problem. It was what made it spray that turned it into a global issue. Companies scrambled to replace the formula, switching to safer propellants, but the reputation stuck. The phrase "cheese in a can" went from novelty to punchline. For those who lived through its rise, it will always taste like nostalgia and a little bit of guilt. Pressure cookers without safety valves were once found in nearly every grandparent's kitchen, sitting on stovetops like sturdy metal workhorses ready to tackle any meal. These early models built pressure quickly, helping families cook stews, beans, and soups in a fraction of the usual time. Back then, efficiency was everything, and these cookers felt like the future of fast home cooking. People trusted them wholeheartedly, believing their heavy lids and thick walls made them fail-proof. But without proper safety valves, internal pressure had nowhere to escape when temperatures got too high. That built-up steam turned the cooker into a ticking bomb, capable of launching lids across kitchens or sending boiling food erupting in every direction. Stories of exploding pots became alarmingly common, with many home cooks experiencing burns or shattered kitchen walls. When regulators finally stepped in, they began enforcing strict safety standards that required multiple release mechanisms. Modern pressure cookers are far safer, but those older models left a legacy of caution in many households. Grandparents who lived through these accidents often share their stories with a mix of humor and relief, but the danger was real and unforgettable. Today, it is difficult to imagine using a pot that could explode without warning, yet it was once a routine part of home cooking. These early cookers serve as a reminder that progress sometimes comes with painful lessons. Shrinky Dinks were marketed as a harmless art project, a way for kids to draw, color, and then watch their creations magically shrink into hard plastic charms. What no one mentioned at first was that the original versions came with serious hazards. Early Shrinky Dinks required baking in standard home ovens, and as they heated, they released fumes from the plastic sheets that were far from healthy. Kids often pressed their faces close to the oven door, noses nearly touching the glass, to watch their designs twist and curl like magic. The transformation was hypnotic, bright markers darkening, edges curling, and colors deepening into perfect little trinkets. For a few glorious minutes, the entire kitchen smelled like excitement and chemical vapor, and no one thought twice about it. The smell was sharp and unmistakable, filling kitchens with a chemical tang that left many parents concerned. Kids huddled around the oven door to watch the transformation, unaware that they were breathing in harmful gases. While no major disasters were widely reported, growing concern about fumes and burns forced manufacturers to redesign the product with safer materials and methods. Despite the risk, Shrinky Dinks became an icon of 1980s crafting, a mix of creativity, danger, and instant gratification. The thrill of watching your artwork warp, curl, and harden into something permanent was unforgettable, even if it came with a dose of toxic nostalgia. Formaldehyde-laced milk sounds like something out of a nightmare, but in the early 1950s it was a reality for some families. When refrigeration was expensive and spoilage high, certain dairy producers found a shortcut. Add a touch of formaldehyde, a preservative used for embalming. It kept the milk fresh longer, even in the heat. To the average shopper, this was the golden age of trust. If it came in a bottle with a farm logo, it had to be safe. The idea that something so pure-looking could be chemically tampered with was unthinkable. But greed and convenience always find their way into progress, especially when no one is watching. Consumers never suspected a thing, trusting the white liquid poured into their children's cereal bowls. For years, families drank what they believed was the purest symbol of health, completely unaware of the chemical lurking within. It took illness, lawsuits, and stricter inspections to expose the practice. Once the scandal broke, public trust in the dairy industry took a hit that lasted decades. The lesson was clear: not everything that looks wholesome is. Sometimes the most dangerous things are the ones that seem the most natural. Children participating in live nativity scenes with real animals was a cherished holiday experience in the 1970s. Schools and churches would gather goats, donkeys, sheep, or even small calves, placing them in straw-lined corners while children in robes acted out the story of the nativity. The animals brayed, shifted, or occasionally caused chaos, but everyone loved it. There was something magical about sharing the stage with creatures that felt straight out of the story itself. Children learned gentleness and patience in ways no classroom lesson could teach, and the unpredictability of the animals made every performance feel alive. Parents watched proudly, cameras in hand, capturing moments that felt sacred in their simplicity. But today, safety and liability laws make this nearly impossible. Real animals require permits, supervision, insurance, and strict handling rules. Most places do not attempt it anymore. The warmth of those live scenes has been replaced by cardboard props or digital projections. Yet anyone old enough to remember those nights can still smell the hay and hear the soft bleats that completed the scene. Long before energy drinks became common, Jolt Cola was already rewriting the rules of caffeine. Its slogan said it all the sugar and twice the caffeine. In the 80s, that made it the ultimate rebel's drink. It was for gamers, coders, students pulling all-nighters, and anyone who wanted to feel like they were living on the edge of exhaustion. It tasted like liquid chaos, sweet enough to jolt you awake and strong enough to make your hands tremble after a few cans. Parents hated it, which only made it more appealing. For teenagers, drinking Jolt was not about taste. It was about rebellion. Supermarkets stacked cases of it, and teenagers wore their Jolt pride like a badge of honor. But as caffeine limits tightened and parents grew concerned about hyperactive kids bouncing off the walls, the drink became a symbol of excess. Regulators started cracking down, and Jolt slowly disappeared from the mainstream. It did not vanish with a bang. It just fizzled away like the last sip of a flat cola. Still, those who remember that metallic sweetness and electric buzz can tell you, it was more than a drink. It was pure adrenaline in a can, and once you tried it, nothing else quite hit the same. Carbon tetrachloride fire extinguishers were once seen as the future of household safety, a sleek and modern solution to kitchen flare-ups and small electrical fires. Grandparents kept them under sinks, in garages, and near stoves, believing they were armed with the best protection money could buy. When flames appeared, people were told to spray this magical liquid right onto the fire, watching it smother flames in seconds. But nobody knew what happened when that liquid touched heat. It released vapors that could stop lungs from breathing and turn a simple fire into a deadly cloud. Families who rushed to put out fires ended up inhaling something far more dangerous than the flames themselves, unaware that each breath carried a hidden risk. Today, it is terrifying to think how many families stood inches away from a toxic haze without understanding the danger. Those extinguishers remain one of the most unsettling reminders that sometimes the things meant to save us carry their own kind of threat, one hidden behind promises of safety and progress. Public punishment in classrooms was another normal part of 1970s schooling, and nothing symbolized that better than the dunce chair. If you were caught daydreaming, laughing too loud, or falling behind, you could be made to sit at the front of the class facing the wall while everyone else stared. Sometimes teachers made kids wear a paper hat or hold a sign that said slow or lazy. Humiliation was a teaching tool, and students were told it would make them stronger. But the truth was, it made children terrified of making mistakes. Many adults still feel that pang of shame when they think about being singled out for something as small as a spelling error. The dunce chair was less about correction and more about control, a way to remind everyone watching what happens if you step out of line. Today, that kind of cruelty would never pass as education. The Cabbage Patch Snack Time Kids doll was designed to be cute, interactive, and surprisingly hungry. Kids could feed it pretend snacks that disappeared into its mechanical mouth as the doll chewed with a quiet whirring sound. At first, it felt like magic, a toy that could eat on its own. But that magic quickly turned into horror for many children. The doll's motorized mouth had no off switch, and it did not know the difference between plastic food and real fingers. Countless kids learned that the hard way, getting their hair or fingertips caught in the doll's relentless jaws. Parents rushed to pull the batteries, but even that sometimes did not stop it. The manufacturer recalled the dolls after several injuries, but not before the Snack Time kids had earned a spot in toy history for all the wrong reasons. Despite its creepy legacy, some collectors still keep them. A strange reminder of how wild 1980s toy innovation could be. The idea of a doll that eats might sound innocent, but when it starts chewing on you, the fun ends fast. Unventilated indoor Christmas tree flocking was something that families approached with excitement instead of fear. In the 1970s, grabbing a can of artificial snow and coating the tree right in the middle of the living room felt like the best way to turn your home into a snowy postcard scene. Kids would gather around just to watch the powder fall onto the branches, building up that soft, white layer that made everything feel instantly festive. The smell, the sound, the little cloud that puffed up with every spray all felt like part of the fun. No one opened windows or wore masks or worried about what they were breathing in. The chemicals were just part of the magic, even if nobody knew it then. Today, though, this is the kind of thing that would get you in trouble faster than you could shake the can. Safety codes require ventilation, protective gear, or outright ban certain types of flocking materials. People talk about air quality and respiratory risks and things that were not even part of the vocabulary in the 1970s. Maybe it is for the best, but it is impossible to deny that the old way felt more enchanting. When you see old photos covered in that soft, snowy coating, you can almost smell the faint sweetness of the artificial snow and remember how proud everyone was of the winter scene they had created indoors. If any of these cheap treasures stirred a memory or sparked regret, share your story in the comments below. Tap like if this trip through forgotten value hit home, and subscribe so you never miss another journey into the things we almost threw away.